The man is dining in the restaurant when he suddenly turns his head and sees something strange. Even though it's broad daylight, a bunch of bizarre black clouds are rising above the roof. He quickly gets up and rushes to the backyard to investigate. To his surprise, the situation outside is even more bizarre, as everything around him is being sucked into the clouds in the sky. Just as the man is in a daze, everything around him suddenly comes to a halt, as if an invisible hand has pressed the pause button. In the next moment, several bolts of lightning strike down from the sky, and he sees the lightning about to hit right in front of him. He panics and rushes into the room with his daughter. Seeing his daughter terrified, Xiao Shuai hurriedly tries to comfort her, while looking for a place to hide. The horrifying scene in front of them instantly frightened the father and daughter so much that they hid under the table and trembled. Fortunately, the strange lightning did not last too long. After just a moment, there was no movement outside. Then, Xiao Shuai hurried outside to check the situation and found that all the cars on the street had broken down. Everyone gathered in one place to watch the excitement, not knowing that the real danger was about to come. Just when everyone was confused, the deep pit under their feet suddenly began to shake, and then countless cracks quickly appeared. It spread wildly in all directions at an extremely fast speed, and then directly tore apart all nearby buildings. This horrific scene in front of them instantly frightened everyone and made them flee wildly in all directions. In just a moment, the ground collapsed into a huge deep pit. However, before everyone could react to what was happening, the collapsed ground suddenly bulged upwards, as if something was about to break out of the ground. Then even the cars that had fallen were ejected by some mysterious force. Following that, to everyone's horror, a gigantic monster that clearly doesn't belong to Earth slowly emerged from the ground. Its size far exceeded all the buildings in the city, making humans appear as tiny as ants in its presence. It was only at this point that people finally realized they needed to run. But after a long time, there was still no sign of the monster making any further moves. Strong curiosity gradually overcomes the rationality of the onlookers, and the bolder individuals stop to check their phones, with some even recklessly moving closer to record videos for social media. Just when everyone thinks it was a false alarm, in the next moment, they finally realize the terror of the monster. However, by the time they decide to run, it's already too late. Anyone struck by the monster is instantly turned to dust, and the entire city becomes a hell on earth. Fortunately, Xiao Shuai reacts quickly and narrowly escapes the disaster. However, the city behind him has already turned into ruins. He finally manages to escape back home, still shaken by what just happened, but he can't believe everything that occurred. Looking at the ashes scattered everywhere, he knows he must leave the city immediately. At this moment, he doesn't have time to explain to the two kids and hurriedly tells his son to pack their things quickly. Then, they need to leave this dangerous place as soon as possible. Luckily, there's a car outside that can still start. With disaster looming, he doesn't have time to think too much, and quickly gets the kids into the car. He even kindly reminds the neighbors to get in and escape together. But the other party is still dragging their feet, and seeing that the monster has already killed, Xiao Shuai is left with no choice. They could only force the door shut, is he? Then with a slam on the gas pedal, they sped away. In the next moment, the neighbor was instantly turned to ash by a laser, and the entire city was attacked again, with countless buildings and bridges being destroyed. After witnessing the horror of the monsters, the man decided to take the kids to the neighboring city to find his ex-wife. However, when they arrived at her house, they found it completely empty. For safety reasons, they decided to spend the night in the basement and try to contact the ex-wife after daybreak. But just as the night was coming, the man was awakened by a familiar flash of lightning. Seeing that something was wrong outside, the father and son were so frightened that they dared not move. Before the man could react, a piercing scream suddenly sounded, and then the whole earth shook violently. The horrifying scene in front of him instantly frightened the man so much that he quickly took his two children and hid in the innermost room. Almost at the same time, a violent explosion instantly swept through their original place. The next morning, the man carefully went out to check the situation, and the scene in front of him immediately terrified him. Last night, a passenger plane was attacked by a monster and crashed here. However, strangely, there was not even a dead body of a passenger on the plane, but only some fragmented clothes. However, Xiao Shuai still found several survivors in the ruins. He thought they were passengers on the plane, but they turned out to be staff from a Los Angeles TV station. It was not until after a conversation that he learned more about the monsters. According to the remaining videos sent back from various places, they analyzed that there were far more than one of these terrible monsters. They almost emerged from the underground of various cities at the same time with lightning, and then began to wreak havoc on the earth. These monsters with 3 tentacles are extremely ferocious. Wherever they appear, they will be killed. All had turned to ruins. According to the latest reports, dozens of major cities including New York and London had completely fallen, and their intentions were clear. This was a war initiated by an alien civilization invading Earth. Just as he finished speaking, a terrifying noise erupted nearby, prompting the female reporter to quickly lead her team away from this dangerous place. Seeing this, the man didn't dare to waste any time and immediately took his family back on the run. This time, he decided to head to his grandmother's house in Boston to search for his ex-wife. So they drove all the way until nightfall and finally reached the nearest port heading to Boston. However, it was already packed with fleeing survivors. This was the only car that could still move, and it quickly became the target of everyone trying to get in. Seeing the situation was critical, he had to give up the car to protect the two kids, focusing solely on keeping them safe, even forgetting to pick up the handgun that had fallen to the ground. As the man carried his daughter away from the crowd and into a restaurant, the sound of gunfire suddenly erupted from outside. Clearly, the massacre triggered by the car was far from over, but as a father, Xiao Shuai could only choose to be strong and continue to walk with the two kids toward the docks. However, just as they were about to board the ferry, an even more horrifying scene suddenly unfolded.
That one